Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastvandakaro Vai Rukarastvanivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So as you know, the topic that we are currently discussing is how to gain samarthyam for Atma Vichara. So samarthyam means capability, or you can say strength. Strength or capability for doing self-enquiry. That's the topic that we are doing. So that it follows the last topic that we discussed, which is how to do Atma Vichara. We saw the issue of identification and disidentification. So that is to go over the process of Atma Vichara. How do you do Atma Vichara? But now this particular topic that follows it has to do with gaining strength to do Atma Vichara. And I think one way to look at it is that when you want to undertake some kind of a long travel, perhaps if you want to go trekking. So to be told where to go for trekking, finding the maps for it, and understanding exactly where, how much climbing is involved. I remember when I first came to this country and I had not yet gotten married. I just was graduating from my college. There were some American friends who were very fond of trekking, and so I got hooked up with them, and I did. We climbed some mountains and all those kinds of things, and we stayed overnight in sleeping bags with a tent and cooking and on log fires and so on. And at the end of that, I had, and especially after I got married, and my wife didn't have much interest in doing so, whereas he and his wife both would go trekking together, I dropped it because I myself was not that really fond of living in the forest at night time and all of those all of the troubles that go along with it. Anyway, so going back to it, you find out where to go trekking, how to go trekking. So this is the how to do Atma Vichara. But then you need to also be equipped properly. And this is where the strength of the Atma Vichara comes in, the capability of Atma Vichara comes in, because there you can say that you have to be very careful about the kind of clothing you're going to get, the kind of shoes that you should have, some dried foods, nuts, etc. that you must have, because you may not be able to eat at a regular time. So these are all the ancillary things that increase your capability, even though you know what to do. So similarly here also, even though the Atma Vichara has been now sketched out for us, the Panchakosha Viveka that we saw, all of that was done. But then even after knowing that, there are ways to strengthen your ability to be effective in self-inquiry, and this is the topic that we are taking. Okay, so based on the class last week, what we saw was that here the instructions to be given in terms of what the Atma is cannot be done in a very straightforward manner that we normally do. Okay, so when we use words, then we have what's called Vachyartha, which you already know. Vachyartha means direct meaning. So when you say, can you please bring some apples next time you're in the grocery store? This is called Vachyartha. So you say, really, what kind of apple? You can say, I want Golden Delicious. Okay, all right, I will bring some. This is very direct. There is nothing, there is no lakshana required, no indirect meaning or anything. But it is very possible that indirect meanings have to be understood gradually. So here, let us understand this very interesting way to see how the capability of the indirect way of looking at things can be gained. Okay? So, supposing there is a child who is, let's say, 2 or 2.5, 3 years old. And actually this happened to us. This is interesting. Well, anyway, let me finish the setup, and then I will tell you the incident that happened in our life. So the child has never seen a cow before. And it is a white colored cow. So in Sanskrit, the child can, if the child can speak Sanskrit, it will say, Ka ayam. What is this? Ka ayam. So the parents can reply to it, Ayam gauhu. This is a cow. Imagine the gauhu in Sanskrit is cow in English. A lot of similarity. And so, I am gauhu. So the child says, Mom, what is this? So the mom says, baby, this is a cow. So the baby understands this is a cow. And it can even say, cow, cow, like this, you repeat it, and so that you instill that in your mind. The next day, there is a black colored cow. And the child asks again. Imagine, because the children are now watching different types of animals, different kinds of colors. And so the next couple of days later, the child says, what is this? Ka ayam. The mother says, baby, I am gau. So the child doesn't understand. Wait a second. The white cow, the white colored animal was a cow. How come this is also a cow? Because they are two different colors. So there's perhaps some dialogue that has to take place, and the mother says, baby, these are all cows. They have different colors. But that doesn't mean that they become a different animal. They are all cows. So this is the first step in not vachyartha but lakshyartha, indicated meaning. The child now has to kind of understand that this particular shape of the animal corresponds to the word cow, and there is a sub family, that is, some of them are white cows, some of them are black cows, and some of them have, shapes maybe slightly different. All of that is something that is more sophisticated thinking. As the child grows up, he understands. So now this humorous incident that happened, this was in 1971. 1971, we had decided, I had promised my mother, I like to generally keep my promises. I may miss here and there, it's very possible. So I told my mother that after 5 or 6 years of staying here and getting some master's degree, I really came for my PhD even though I didn't finish the PhD. I will be back. I had promised my mom and my parents. And so in 1971, I originally came here in 64. In 1971, after 7 years, my wife and I packed up all of our belongings and we went back to India and I was used to work for IBM at that time. And we had a 1.5-year-old son, Sanjay, who was with us. And so I was posted in a steel town, Jamshedpur, as a systems engineer for IBM. And it was really a beautiful bungalow that we had. Amazing. We had a couple of helpers there. Very nice. And I just bought a car and I was, doing well. And I remember so well this one morning, our son was sleeping in a different room and my wife and I were sleeping in a different room. Early in the morning after sunrise, we heard Sanjay cry and he was just beside himself. And it's normally not like that you had as though something bad had happened. So we rushed into the room and Sanjay was standing up in the crib and pointing out to a cow outside who was grazing outside the window and saying, "Tiger, tiger." Somehow he had seen the pictures of tigers and he could not distinguish whether this is a tiger or a cow. So the guy was really afraid. Perhaps he had seen some TV programs where the tigers are very fierce and all that. Oh my gosh, we could not help laughing at him. So anyway, going back to the Lakshanavakya. The Lakshanavakya requires a little bit of thinking and growing up. You cannot say this is a cow and then there's another white cow, you say, yeah, this is a cow. You can say this is a cow family. And so the understanding that this is a cow family is a higher level of thinking on the part of the child. And the same thing happens in various other cases. For example, you say, typically if you go to India, you'll find that after a party, everybody has a driver. And so they will say, in Hindi, they'll say, "Driver ko bulao," please call the driver. And so they called our driver. And supposing the couple standing next to you also tells this guy, please call driver. Now a different driver comes in. So now if the child is looking at two different people and saying this one is also driver, this one is also driver, what gives? They're two different people. So the driver means that there is a kriya, that they are people who are chauffeurs for the cars. This is what it is. Similarly in India we have our ants, we have actually specific names for the ants and so on. So for example, everybody of course had different words, but in Hindi, in Punjab, we will say chachi. Chachi for younger brother's wife is called chachi. And older brother's wife is called tai. We are not calling just auntie, auntie, auntie. There are different names for it. But so generally speaking, we just say chachi as a general thing. So same thing, that the child can be confused. This one was also chachi, you're calling that one also chachi, but they're different people. Anyway, you get the idea. So this is a way for the growth of the thinking of the child. Okay, so in here the Shastra uses this ability to point out the Atma. So this is called Lakshanavakya. Lakshanavakya means that you cannot directly say that this is an apple, but you can say it indirectly such that it is understood. Just like you say this is a cow, then you say that any animal that looks like it is a cow. So you have to make that step on your own. So similarly here, so you say the Atma, this is a Lakshanavakya because if in the case of a cow, you can directly say this is also a cow. All these are cows, cows, cows. But here that is not possible because there is no comparison that this is also an Atma. And yet you cannot directly point out to someone and say this is Atma. So this is where the need for a Lakshanavakya is possible. So this is also possible that if you, this is a very common thing, that if you go someplace and say this is a white horse, so this is supposing people that go for these horse races and they bet on it. And so if you can go to a window and you want to say what kind of horse I should bet, so your friend will say red. He doesn't say red horse, but you say red. The red will win. White will win. Like that you can say. So these are all Lakshanavakyas. Okay? Okay, now let's take the next step towards Atma. So Atma is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Satyam Jnanam Anantam, when these words are spoken, they don't really have an effect on me as they should. I understand what Satyam Jnanam Anantam generally means. Satyam means what is the truth. Jnanam means one which is the form of knowledge. And Anantam means that this is always the case. It does not have any exceptions. It has no limits. This is true as it is. Truth and knowledge are one and the same. So this is a meaning that we know, but I don't really quite get the power of it yet. But if we follow this methodology that we are saying, that we are going to be talking about, you will gain the strength to understand Satyam Jnanam Anantam. through the Lakshanavakya. So how? So here the premise is that Satyam Jnanam Anantam is absolutely true. But to understand the absolute truth of it, first we must recognize the relativity of that truth. So this is what is called, so this is an important concept. I'll just make sure you see this, because this is the underlying concept behind this. So one is called relative truth, which in Sanskrit is called sapeksha satyam. Sapeksha satyam. Apeksha means with relationship to. So sa apeksha means, sapeksha means, relatively speaking, it is true. Then absolute is called nirapeksha. Nirapeksha means nirgataha apeksha. There is no relativity. See, this is kind of like what we were studying on Saturday, where you said this is tatastha lakshanam and swarupa lakshanam. So tatastha lakshanam is relative truth. House on which the cow is sitting is called relatively truth. Swarupa lakshana is that after the cow also has gone, it is still the same. So you are not describing it in relation to something else, but by itself. So similarly, the truth here also is you have either sapeksha satyam or nirapeksha satyam. And sapeksha satyam is a good step. This is exactly what we talked about last Saturday also in the Brahma Sutra class, and we also referred to it in the Kaivalya class. That in order to get prepared for nirapeksha satyam or swarupa lakshanam, the step of sapeksha satyam or tatastha lakshanam, really the same thing, is important. You cannot straight away jump into this. This is what is meant by gaining samarthyam towards Atma Vichara. That unless you have the power, let's say you are, I don't know, it just came to mind. It's not exactly the same thing. Supposing you are a pole vaulter. You need to develop the ability to do pole vault at a very high level. You have to really develop the right muscles, the timing, and then you can be a pole vaulter. Otherwise, pole vaulter means you can always jump 6 or 10 feet or 7 feet. But in order to jump 14 feet, you have to have samarthyam. So this is what we're talking about. How do you gain the samarthyam? Okay? So, going back to this, in order to understand nirapeksha satyam, you have to understand sapeksha satyam. How? So, this is where this is what is said, that if you wanted to understand the free Atma, the truth of the free Atma, you first have to lead a life of satyam outside. This is what is called paramarthika satyam. And then you have vyavaharika satyam, transactional truth. Unless you are wedded to transactional truth, it'll be difficult for you to wrap your mind on the subtlety of the absolute truth. Swami Dayananda used to say that if you wanted to really have absolutely loving, you must be relatively loving. You cannot just go around really picking fights with everybody, and say, I don't like, this is what there was a beautiful saying in the West which says, I love humanity, but I hate people. This is an oxymoron. You cannot say I love humanity because people are humanity. And so, relative truth has to be understood. So, as an example, supposing you ask somebody, he says, I just flew in last night. Some people, you might see at a party and they just want to brag a little bit. That, I just flew in. So where did you fly in from? I was in Mumbai. Then you overhear the same person talk to a Bengali friend from a distance. And so he was saying, I was in Calcutta yesterday. And then you overhear him saying to some people from Tamil Nadu, I was in Chennai yesterday. This is not a truthful person. It is impossible to be in 3 different places at the same time. But if you find him to say, I was in Mumbai, no matter who he's talking to, he's at least talking truthful person. So, supposing you say, okay, so this is what is called relative truth. You ask somebody, sir, let me introduce myself. I am such and such. What is your name, sir? He says, oh, my name is Kedarnath Pandey. Kedarnath Pandey, very nice to meet you. Wonderful. So, you've always been, he says, yeah, I've been Kedarnath Pandey. I've never changed my mind. So, Swami Maheshananji says, this guy is about 40 years old. And you say, you've always been Kedarnath Pandey? He says, yes, I've always been Kedarnath. 50 years ago you were Kedarnath Pandey? He says, no, not 50 years ago, because I was not there. So that means it is relatively, you are relatively Kedarnath Pandey. How about 70 years from now? He says, 70 years from now, 110, I don't think I won't be there. So I am just Kedarnath Pandey for a few years. And other than that, I don't know who I am. So this is called Nirapeksha Satyam. And as we will see, we should see that this is not true for the Atma. It's not as though I started becoming the so-called I 50 years ago. But in order to understand Nirapeksha Satyam, I must wrap my mind around Sapeksha Satyam, relative truth. Swami Maheshananji pointed this out. He said, somebody said, but Swamiji, I love my country. And I'm always loyal to my country. No one can ever take me away from him. This is the area that I really just love. Swamiji says, supposing in your next life you were born a citizen of China, you were born into a Chinese family, then it is not that you're going to love India. In fact, there is a big dispute between India and China about the boundaries. And so it's not as though you are always going to love India. It all depends on where you were born, who do you love, and all that. He was telling us there is a story in one of the Puranas. So, Puranas are really wonderful for stories. And they're not as subtle as the Upanishads, but the truth remains the same. So the story is that Maharshi Narada, so Narada was a Paradarshi. Paradarshi means that he was aware of the past lives up to a point and future lives up to a point. He was given that ability. In fact, he could go back and forth between heaven and earth. And he had the special power through his sankalpa and through his thinking and his given by Ishvara. He had this power. So he had a nephew called Parvata. Parvata here means the mountain. So the Ishtadevata of the mountain was his nephew. This is the story. So one day Narada and Parvata were both strolling, walking. And all of a sudden Narada started giggling to himself. Parvata said, Mamaji means my uncle, why are you laughing? He says, oh, no, it's okay. It's all right. It's just a private joke. He says, you expressed it. Now you have to explain it to me. He says, no, you won't understand. He says, but please explain it to me. He says, you really want to know? Let me tell you. They were passing by a shop where the shopkeeper had all these vegetables and fruits displayed outside his shop, and there was a goat who was trying to eat the fruits. And the goat was bothering the guy, so he actually had a stick and he was just shooing him away and beating the goat. Say, go away, don't eat my fruits. This was the cause of Narada's laughter. So his nephew said, I don't understand what's so funny about it. Why are you laughing? He says, do you know something? In the last life, the goat was his father. He is the one who established this shop from the beginning. And when he died, he gave it to his son. And he was so enamored with this shop, and unfortunately he had done some bad things, so he was reborn as a goat. But his love for the shop was still there. And so he would actually come and visit the shop again and again. His son didn't know this is my father. So he was trying to beat him up. He says, what a funny situation. Only I know this. So this is what is called Sapeksha Satyam and Nirapeksha Satyam. That our relative truth may change, but the absolute truth behind the relative truth never changes. Okay. Now, and in fact it's interesting, Swami Maheshanandi says it is a well-known fact that people that you are attracted to and you love somehow had a connection with you, a pleasant one in the previous life. And people who bother you and you don't like are ones that the same thing happened in the previous lives. You didn't like them, but somehow they are still together with you, and you still have to develop some patience with them, and so on and so forth. So these multi-life relationships are very much the truth. It doesn't apply only in one life. This is what the Shastra points out. Okay. All right, let's go further. Let's go forward. So the relative truth, if we look at it, the relative truth has limits on it. Obvious. Because relative truth means that I am someone as a jiva, but not forever. Only at a beginning time and a beginning end. So Swami Maheshwaranji says, this is very much like, sometimes you get a check from a bank. And the bank says, this is something which the bank gives it to you as some kind of a bonus. This is not your own money, but it's kind of like a check on your money, interest on your money, or something like that, some bonus on your money. And right at the bottom, the check says, good until July 31. So before July 31, you go in and they'll give you $100 cash right away. Supposing you forget, it happens to us all the time. You say, oh, I'll get it done. And it's at the bottom of the line. All of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, this is August. Can I just go to the bank and just say, please, can you? And say, I can't do this. It's gone. The limits were there. The truth was there until that time. After that, it is gone. Okay. So now we come to the method of transitioning to Lakshana in our life to understand the Atma. So, it turns out that the truth of the Atma is the truth of Parameshwara, of Ishvara. So you can see that it is kind of like the entire ocean is nothing but water. But I, as a particular segment of the ocean, as a wave, is me. And right now, I'm only concerned with me. Me, my limitations, my problems, my strengths, my relationships. This is all me. I do not recognize the presence of Ishvara, the contribution of Ishvara, the strength of Ishvara. Actually, I am, as we have seen before, this is not the first time we are talking about this, I am misnaming myself as a wave, when in fact I am the ocean itself. I am the water and the ocean. But I have a hard time recognizing that, because I am so enamored with my life that the deeper aspect of that is not visible to me. I don't understand that. So in order to understand that, I have to immerse myself by repeating the truth of Ishvara again and again. So this is what is called gaining the strength of Atma Vichara. So the Atma Vichara, I think I mentioned, I said this in the last class also, and this is part of my own growth really, is that the self-inquiry without bringing Ishvara into the picture is powerless. It may be true, and if you have the ability to understand it, wonderful. But chances are you have to bring the guna, the qualities of Ishvara as yourself. So as an example, we have seen that the quality of Ishvara, which is the Nirapeksha Satyam. So Nirapeksha Satyam means what? Nirapeksha Satyam means that it is the Swarupa of truth. It is. Regardless of whether it is, you can say, I as a Jiva am only in my life. Isn't it? But the Nirapeksha Satyam, which is Anadi, Satyam is Anadi, doesn't have a beginning. The Swarupa of the Satyam, that guna is easier to understand for me as the guna of Ishvara. You see the point that I'm making. Let me kind of, to the point of really repeating it again. It is, my mind cannot easily grasp that I am Anadi. Because it says, what are you talking about? You were born. And so if you tell your mind, no, I know, but Vedanta says I am not born. Vedanta says I am not born is a weak understanding. It's not a strong understanding. See, this is where the strength of the understanding has to come in. The strength of the understanding has to come from first relying on Ishvara. There my mind says, oh, I understand Ishvara can be Anadi, but not you. You say, okay, all right. Okay, I compromise with you. I cannot, at least for the time being. Compromise means that you just make a temporary peace with your mind. And you say, okay, I am not Anadi. I am not beginningless. But Ishvara can be Anadi? He says, yeah, Ishvara can be Anadi. Ishvara is Anadi means, Ishvara means that is the Nirapeksha Satyam. But don't you see that I am also Satyam, even though I am Sapeksha Satyam, but I am Satyam. I am Satyam. Mind says, okay, yeah, you're this I can understand. You're Sapeksha Satyam, not Nirapeksha Satyam. You're relatively true. Okay. Don't I see that only the absolute truth can appear to be relatively true? I have to immerse myself in the thought that Ishvara is everything, which means Ishvara is me alone also, not alone, is me also. So this is a step-by-step thinking. So this is what these are not just theoretical things. To gain the samarthyam from Atma Vichara, these things are very important. So it is said that really speaking, you have to immerse yourself in the understanding of the guna of Ishvara as being nothing but yourself alone. Because otherwise you are blocking it off and it says, no, yeah, I'm just an isolated person, don't bother me. I'm just leave it to me. Hey, if you do that, you will never get rid of your sense of limitation. It is just like saying, for a child which says, no, I just want to see that the white cow is cow. The black cow may be somebody else. You have to grow to understand that really all these cows grazing. It was interesting, in December, our son had rented a house in what's called Dillon Beach. I had never been there before. It's in the Marin County, west of Napa on the coast. And so he and his wife had rented a house for a weekend. And he invited both us and my daughter-in-law's parents. And so we all lived together for a couple of days. But I tell you, it was very nice, very cold, so we couldn't really get out very much. But what I really enjoyed was the journey on through from 101 to taking west toward Dillon Beach. What I really enjoyed was the huge animal farms on the way. Beautiful. And these days it was very green, still is green, although we haven't had any rain, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. But it's very green, very pleasant to the eyes. And there must have been thousands of cows. Although every time I see a cow in this country, I cringe. Look, just thinking about how their life will be snuffed out. It's a very sad thing, really. Very sacred animal, and how it's treated by the West and how they're slaughtered to make meat. Anyway, that thought I had to ignore. But the sight of the cows, thousands of them, and my wife and I were just beginning to understand the differences. There were some spotted cows, some single color cows, different color cows, all with different species, but all genetically they're different, but all the same. Some had very, very flat tops, some of them had more curvy tops. Thousands of them. That was the most pleasant part of the whole journey. Anyway, so a child can say that I refuse to grow. This is the white one is a cow. The other one, I don't know what that is. This is exactly how we are. I find that I am much more concerned with me as a person. And the other people are completely different from me. What I have to understand is the Paramatma is you, I, him, her, they, everywhere. And I have to gradually come to that point by immersing myself in the guna of the Ishvara. So that brings us to the next point, that the thought of Ishvara begins with the chanting of the name of Ishvara. This is how it is. It is what you immerse yourself in. determines what you will become. Swami Dayanand used to give that example. He says, if those of you that are not Indians, you must have tasted Rasagulla. Those who are Indians, of course, know that very well. So Rasagulla, another incident when we were in Jamshedpur, same time we were talking about our son calling the cow a tiger. When we left IBM, we decided after a while, the war was going on in 71, and we decided to come back. All kinds of things happened. And so on coming back, we went to a local halwai, which is a guy making sweets. And we said, can you please teach us how to make rasagullas? So the guy sent us a cook. And he says, okay, I'll tell you exactly how to make a rasgulla. And we never were able to make good rasgullas. Anyway, that's a sad story. But Swami Dayanand used to say, if you want to make a rasagulla, you first fry the paneer separately and make it into a gola, into a round thing. Then you have to make chasni, which is a liquefied form of sugar with some water and some sugar, and you have to keep stirring it. This is called chasni. Then what you have to do is you have to put the round cheese into the chasni and leave it there to soak it. You can't just take tongs, dip it there and then take it out. That won't do it. It has to go inside it through and through. And this is exactly the similar kind of argument that Swami Maheshananji pointed out, that our issue is that we keep the guna of Ishvara separate from us. This guna of Ishvara is the chasni. It is the sugar, the honey, the sweetness of it. And I am like gola, rasagulla. But I cannot become a rasagulla until I am immersed in Ishvara's chasni. These are not just simple examples, guys. These are life's deepest secrets. And the sooner we equip ourselves with this, the better off we will be. Otherwise, Vedanta looks like a dry thing. It's nice to study and so on, but my life remains the same. So now we have to go back to the main tracks, that in order for us to see the nirapeksha satyam, which is the truth for all of us, not as though only one person is absolute truth. Everybody is absolute truth. But everyone is blocking the absolute truth by clinging to relative truth. And the way to immerse yourself in the absolute truth is to embrace it. And the way to embrace that is to think and live the absolute truth. To think about absolute. The way to think about absolute truth is to understand the meaning of words that define the absolute truth. (853). Let's take an example of this. Very humorous but a effective example of this. So, what the example points out is that you need to slowly do what is called japa yajna. So different kinds of yajnas are there. I'll defer that humorous example for a minute. Let me kind of build the case for japa yajna. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita also, Sri Krishna says, out of all the yajnas, I am the best. He's talking about the best. Out of all the rivers, Ganga is the best. Like that he's saying. Out of all the yajnas, different kind of yajnas, japa yajna is the best. Why? And what is japa yajna? So japa yajna is to repeat the name of Ishvara in your mind again and again. So one can say, just by repeating the name of Ishvara, what is going to happen? A lot will happen, as we should see. This is what we are going to point out. Lot can happen. Okay? So let's just look at the japa yajna. The japa yajna means to be used to bringing in the gunas of Ishvara in your mind through words. And to understand their meanings. By simpler repetition is a good start. It's a start. It's a start and a necessary start to simply do japa yajna without understanding the meaning. But if you understand the meaning, you will get the full benefit. Otherwise, you don't get the full benefit. So now let's look at this humorous example. So there was this young girl whose parents used to teach her a mantra and a prayer. Really not even a mantra, just a prayer. And this is a very common prayer. You say, please, young girl, repeat this. Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare He Nath Narayana Vasudeva. Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare He Nath Narayana Vasudeva. And so she used to repeat Shri Krishna Hare. Like that she used to say that. It's very much like, I tell you, when the kids are there. So I have, I think I mentioned this to you. My youngest granddaughter is now 10 months old, and I'm just trying very hard to teach her some simple things. So I've taken it upon myself to teach her Namaste. Please do Namaste. She has no idea what Namaste is, what is it. But I'm trying. And I'll tell you, there are signs of my succeeding. In the last few visits, I have seen it. So I would say, Sanya, please do Namaste. And then I have everybody there also do the same thing. Do Namaste. Namaste. So this young girl says, I don't know what is Namaste. She hears it in her ears and she's looking around and saying, I don't know what is Namaste. But you know what? My repetition is beginning to have an effect. So now she doesn't do this. But what she does is, her hands are over there. She puts them close to it. So the closeness of the two hands is already a done deal. I've already demonstrated it too. First my son was very skeptical. He says, no, Dad, I think you're just dreaming. But the last few times when I'd say, Sanya, please do Namaste, she's kind of like, she hasn't done this yet. It will happen. Unfold your hands and do this. And then also bend this is called Namaste. So this is a good beginning, but that's all. But she doesn't understand what it is. Only later on you will see what Namaste is. And as you know what Namaste means, Namaha Te, I bow to you. And what it really means is really that at this point in time, I am focusing on you. My mind, my eyes, my whole attention is to you. That's all that one can say. And I welcome you. This is what namaste means. But at least in the beginning one has to be taught, just do namaste, do namaste. So this young girl was taught this prayer. He Nath Narayana Vasudeva. Alright, so this is the beginning. Now what happened was, she got married when she became older. She was married off to a boy. And her husband's name was Narayana. And her father-in-law's name was Vasudeva. Now, in many parts of the country, even in Punjab and other places and so on, there is a custom, and in fact it is a Shastric edict. One should not talk loudly about one's own name. And also your spouse's name and the elders' names. These three are generally a no-no. One can say, how can you say about yourself? So they say that the more you give your own name, if you have to give a name, that's a different thing. If somebody says, please state your name, and you say, my name is such and such, that's okay. But don't go around voluntarily saying, you can say me, I wanted to tell you something. That's okay. In fact, Swami Maheshananji says that this is very true, that supposing you pick a very serious fight with somebody, and the other person has really done something very wrong with you, and you are powerless at that point, but you say, if I don't get back to you later on with the right response, my name is not Kedarnath Pandey. Is that understood? So you have focused on the name, and you want to make sure that that name is associated with a sense of revenge. So they say you don't should be taking your own name. Spouses is also very common. And especially if it's one of them is older, like I'm older than my wife, she never calls me with my name. Never. She'll talk to somebody else and say, Vijay said this. But she never calls me directly and say, hey Vijay. She never does it. And I also avoid doing that, even though she's younger than me. So I can say dear or hi or something like this. Father-in-law also is the same thing. Now this girl was married to a family whose husband is Narayan and her father-in-law is Vasudeva. So she used to, this is the non-understanding. And so she says, I'm not supposed to take their name. So she says, Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari, He Natha Lalu's father and grandfather. Hey go Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari, He Natha Lalu's father and grandfather. Swamiji says, how will this be? She doesn't understand that here you have to take the name of the Ishvara. There it says that if we do the Japa Yajna with meaning, we need to do Japa Yajna with meaning. Like for example, Narayana and Vasudeva. Let's look at the meaning of these. Narayana means both of them had really more or less the similar meaning. Both of them means Narayana is one who is the karma phala data. This is all given in details of, Vyutpatti Artha. You have to see all the meaning of it. But I'm just giving you a summary. So Narayana means one who is karma phala data. And Vasudeva means one who dwells in you as your antaryami. So together, Narayana and Vasudeva means Ishvara working through me in making sure that I am headed in the right direction. How? What do you mean by headed in the right direction? How? Okay. So one thing we should understand is that Narayana means, the meaning of Narayana and Vasudeva together means one who gives me the results of my actions appropriately and instantaneously, without any unnecessary delay. If there is a delay necessary, then fine. So the cycle of karma and karma phala is given right away. So I'm just taking different examples, but supposing you touch inadvertently, you touch something which is very hot, then the pain of the heat is given instantaneously to you, so that you remove your hand right away. Happens to all of us. You didn't realize this happened to my brother-in-law the other day. He was talking on the phone, and there was something on the stove, and the handle had become so hot. When he left it, it was not hot. When he just finished the phone call, after a minute or so, he came back and he touched it, and now it was really blazing hot and really got his fingers singed. So, really speaking, if you touch something hot, undesirable, the results are given right away, because Ishvara is very anxious that you should not get hurt. And don't put your hand on that again. Karma phala and wisdom. Swami Paramarthananda, Swami Maheshananji says that, listen, supposing you appear for an exam and you got an unexpected C, and you are very disappointed. So this unexpected low mark for something that you had applied to is really for your own good, because you have made some mistakes stemming from the fact that you didn't understand the subject matter. So it is important for us to let you know. But instead what happens in India is that people will bribe the teachers to give them good marks, thinking, I have beaten the system. Well, you have not understood anything. And it is really the right thing. Similarly, when you have a diagnosis of a medical ailment, then the doctor gives you a favor by saying, I'm very sorry, but this is a very serious problem. Say, really? And instead what happens is we take a second opinion. Swami Maheshananji says it's kind of like, supposing there is a slight crack in the wall that has come up, and you call an engineer, and a very good engineer, and he comes in And he says, I have really bad news for you. This is not just an ordinary crack. This means that the whole house may fall down if you do not repair this wall. And you say, really? How much does it cost? I think it'll be close to $35,000. He says, oh my God. Are you sure? He says, sir, this is my opinion. And so you say, maybe he doesn't know. And you call somebody up and he says, just patch it up. I think these engineers, they don't know what they're talking about. Big mistake. You can patch it up and it may go for another 6 months or so. And after a while, the whole house has to be demolished. So anytime somebody gives you, so this is Narayana. Narayana means that really speaking, both good and bad, the feedback is given instantaneously. So it is said, please say the name of Narayana as often as you can, at any time, at any place, with the full understanding of what it means. Ishvara is your own antaryami, working through you with the best interest of you in mind. Recognize it, and in fact, with the guna that he is anadi and you are non-different from Ishvara, therefore you are also anadi. This is the nirapeksha satyam, which requires sapeksha satyam to begin with. But you have to graduate slowly by immersing yourself in the understanding and love of your higher self. So this is called japa yajna. I think I have enough time to make one more observation on japa yajna. Japa yajna means, here Swami Maheshanji points out, in fact, you know what, I think I will, because there's some more things that need to be talked about. The purity of prana, I think I mentioned that a couple of times before. I will defer the understanding of japa yajna. I'll make a note of it that that's where I ended, and I will start the next class with the importance of japa yajna and the importance of prana, pranayama, and of proper breathing. Why that is the case when you're doing japa. This is an important thing, and I think it requires a little bit more time to explain. So let me not start on that until the next class. So I'll end the class today. And in summary, we should understand how to gain samarthyam for Atma Vichara. How to gain the strength necessary to make this journey. Without that, we are fooling ourselves. And we'll get into trouble. Just like if you go hiking and you don't have the proper boots and you're in proper clothing, you will, as probably what I did, you will never go back hiking again, which I didn't. I don't like going hiking. I'm okay with sitting inside the home. But people that are properly equipped love it and gain from the hiking. So the samarthyam of Atma Vichara is the topic, and the way to do that is to go from relative to absolute, number one. And number two is to recognize the presence of Ishvara as Narayana and Vasudeva and Krishna and all the other ones. This is just an example. But an important example of Karma Phaladata who is fully cognizant of you and gives you the appropriate Karma Phala instantaneously for your own benefit. So with that, we will end this class and we will continue on next time with an understanding of Japa Yajna and the importance of Japa Yajna. Okay. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. You will never go back. Somehow I'm not seeing most names. Let me do another one. I will, because there's some more things that need to be talked about. Of Japa Yajna. I only see a couple of names for some reason. So let me redo this. I don't see. I see some people are here, but their names are not being shown on the chat window. Don't know why. So let me redo this. It's very funny, same thing. I only see Natalya's name and Balamani's name. And the rest of them, for some reason, I do not see. So my apologies. If there's any questions that you had, I'm not able to see it. What's happening? I'm not sure why. Nope, I can't see anymore. So I'm afraid that if you had any questions, I'm not able to see it for some reason, because I only saw a couple of names and the rest of them are hidden from me. So my apologies for that. I did send you an email regarding a Zoom satsang next Sunday, the 13th at 9 o'clock California time, PST. And I hope you got the email, and I hope that I get a chance to see you there. not only if you had any questions, but if you just wanted to chat and give some observations about your life or about the class attendance, please do so. So I would love to have a chance to have a dialogue with you. Very rarely, mostly it is a monologue, not a dialogue. But I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Okay. Hari Om.